Hi, everybody. Welcome to Grounded for Life slash virtual happy hour. Um, Hopefully that don't keep up. I see it just glitch. I'll do it again. Grounded for Life and or virtual happy hour. Just kind of depends on where you go to. If you go to BitChute, it's virtual happy hour. Go to Rumble, I believe it's still under Grounded for Life. And YouTube, I think, is still under Grounded for Life, however long I'm there. But I wouldn't expect I'll be there very long. I ain't one to really comply, and I don't really care. I don't have that many people anyway, so whatever. But just trying to get some information out. This particular info I got today, I listened to it while I was driving truck. Um, Pretty amazing stuff. I think this is something everybody needs to see. The more people see it, the better. So definitely share it around. I got this from Nino Rodriguez, David Nino Rodriguez, Nino's Corner.tv. Go there, check him out. He's got tons of information, tons. There's just one thing I actually subscribe to his site, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this. I'm not monetized or anything. I'm just trying to get the information out, trying to be a good patriot. Um, so that's Nino's Corner.tv. And if somebody here sees that, and you know, feel free to let them know that I'm sharing this. Hopefully it's okay. I tried to email him, but I haven't received anything back from him yet. So, you know, sorry if I'm doing something, if I'm stepping on some toes. I'm just trying to share it out to the public because I think it's important. But anyway, this is pretty amazing. It's a round table. It's got the ghost. It's got Juan, 107, Juanito, and it's got another guy. I'm sorry, I don't know his name. Um, like I said, I was just listening to it while I was driving truck. I wasn't watching it. And then there's four of them, but and I can't remember the guy's name. Damn it. Anyway, uh, I'll jump right into it. You guys check it out. Please like, share, subscribe on these channels wherever you see me. Just getting rolling again. It's been a crazy spring through fall for me. I'm still working killer hours, so I'm just trying to smash this in as quick as I can. But yeah, it's been crazy. I work in agricultural, uh, custom hauling type thing, and 'tis the season. I'm busy as hell. So am I. But anyway, let me jump into this and I'll share it right out to you. I'm sorry, I can't remember the guy's name. As soon as I see it, I'll remember it. But right now, I'm drawing a blank. So sorry about that. But I'll share it up here and you'll see. This is it. Right. It's glasses. My glasses. It's Lloyd Brunson. That's the guy. And this guy should probably go down in the history books, I'm thinking. It's that intense. So it's a big deal, guys. Definitely check it out and definitely share it with other patriots and especially share it with people that aren't. I think that's the way to go. Nobody's going to change their mind if they don't see a reason to change their mind, right? So, yeah, you got a family member, friend, whatever. I got a few. Well, not too many. I kind of weeded them off. I ain't got a whole lot of liberal anything around me. But but yeah, if you know somebody, say, hey, you might want to check into some of this information. I don't care if it's whatever I put out. Anybody's welcome to share it out. If they like it, feel free. Like I said before, I'm not monetized. I don't care. I'm just putting this information out for people to see. So, if anybody wants to use my info the same way, by all means, you have my permission. It's just running. It's an open book. So, all right, I'm going to get into this and just sitting there trying to remember. I want to take this off here because I don't want it up in your face. Let's see, I'll put it on stereo sound here quick. Bear with me, guys. I'm still trying to figure this out. Should be able to hide these so they're not in your way. And we'll get right at it.
All right, folks, welcome to Nino's Corner.tv. I have an amazing, epic, star-studded lineup here. I got an epic roundtable here. Ghost, everyone loves the Ghost. I got Juan Savon. Everybody loves Juan Savon. My two most highly recommended and requested guests, and I got Lloyd Brunson. Lloyd Brunson, you are one of, is it three brothers that are putting forth this lawsuit, or four brothers?
Yeah, three brothers, myself and two brothers.
And I apologize to my audience. I have dropped the ball. I've had a death, a very close friend die, and so I've been kind of scrambling. Lloyd, can you catch us up to speed on what exactly is going on here? And I'm one of those people.
Okay, well, I guess your listeners or viewers know about the lawsuit or the petition that's in front of the Supreme Court right now, right? So where would you like me to start? I'll try to make it as concise as I possibly can, so I don't want to get anyone lost in legal jargon. But
well, I see that the Supreme Court is not returning. They're out indefinitely, is what I've heard. So I'm kind of confused on everything.
Okay, let me. Yeah, there's a lot of confusion out there on the internet. What has happened is at the get-go of this, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, before you go to the Supreme Court, you've got to go through all the lower courts. Okay, well, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals was sitting on this after the battle through state court and the lower federal court. That was the final step before the United States Supreme Court. And so they sit on it for like 3 or 4 months, and we get together and go, well, now that's the same thing that's happening in an identical case. I launched mine first. Roland, my brother, we all decided that it'd be a good idea to launch 2 federal cases against the defendants so that one of them would go to the Supreme Court and get there before the other. And this was the plan at the get-go. It wasn't about the lower courts. We just wanted them to go ahead and do their dismissal stuff, get it dismissed so we could go up the ladder, up the chain, so we could go right straight to the Supreme Court after it was completely adjudicated in the lower courts. So here we are with my brother Rollins. I'm stuck in federal court, and there's a big story about that because we actually took the federal court and the 10th Circuit Court to state court and sued him. And after that, they released mine and issued 388 summonses, which started being served to all the defendants and eventually were. So that's the different case. But the case that's in front of the Supreme Court right now with Roland J. Brunson on it as plaintiff, that's where we're at right there. And so so here we are with the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals sitting on that case that's now at the Supreme Court. They won't do a thing, and it's been 4 months, and we just think we're dead in the water because without getting the lower court's decisions, you can't move it to the Supreme Court. So my brother and I put some pressure on my legal-minded brother, who's behind the legal procedures and everything, said, you've got to find some rule, some civil procedure that we could bypass the 10th Circuit Court decision because we're just, they're not doing anything. So he did some research and he called me and he was excited. He says, the Supreme Court has Rule 11 that allows you to bypass the final 10th Circuit Court or a circuit court without their decision, but it has to be deemed a national emergency. So he says, what we have to do is when we file this petition, it's got to actually say on the cover, petition for the United States Supreme Court, petition for writ of certiorari under this court's Rule 11. So we put it all together, and the Supreme Court requires it especially bound, and you have to go through some pretty good formatting to get it to them correctly. So we had it perfect bound, and we sent it off to them, and just with our fingers crossed and prayers that they would accept this as a national emergency and let us bypass the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals decision since they were sitting on it. So 5 days later, my brother, the plaintiff, received a phone call from the clerk's office. Now, the clerk of the Supreme Court is not just a justice clerk. The clerk of the Supreme Court is, I believe his name is Scott Sessions Harris. And for 11 years, he was the attorney for the Supreme Court. And so a case analyst from his office calls my brother and told him that they had decided to accept this case based on the Rule 11 petition platform, which means they were accepting it without us going to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals because they obviously characterized this as a national emergency. And so they also requested that he put additional pleadings in it that they had been seen in the docket from the lower federal court. And so they said, put that in there and then get it to us as soon as you can. And so we put that all together. And 2 days before we were ready to get it off to them, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, we were notified, had made a decision. And so it's like, well, now we don't need the Rule 11. So we thought, well, should we just leave that information in there or take it out? So he called the Supreme Court, the number that they gave him, and talked to the case analyst. And she says, now that they've done that, you don't need the Rule 11 part of it. Just take that out, take it off the cover, and put the stuff in we asked, and then get it to us as soon as you can. They said, how soon could you get it to us? And we said, well, my brother said, well, about 2 weeks. And they said, well, can you try to get it to us sooner than that? So a week later, they had received it. So what happened is we got it to them. We mailed it on the 20th of October. They received it the 21st, and they docketed it on the 24th, and they showed that it was filed on the 20th, the day we sent it. That's standard procedure. And then they notified the U.S. attorneys who were defending the 388 defendants that they had until the 23rd of November to respond with an opposition. That was their deadline. They get one chance. They can file an opposition to this petition. That's it. As soon as they file that, it goes to conference where the 9 justices hear this in a private room, and they take a vote on it, whether it moves forward to a full-blown hearing with the litigants, both parties represented, go ahead and argue before the justices or not. So we send it off to them, and they accept it. And then they notify the attorneys that they've got till the 23rd. So the 23rd rolls around. That was the day before Thanksgiving. That was Wednesday. So Wednesday, we're thinking their deadline is up. Why hasn't anything happened? What's going on? The U.S. attorneys dropping the ball. What's going on? They're going to miss their opportunity to oppose this, and that'd be fine with us to miss the deadline. So all of a sudden, like early afternoon, we see on the docket that the U.S. attorneys are no longer representing the 380 defendants. They have been relieved of their duties, and now the United States Solicitor General is representing as their legal counsel the 388 defendants on the complaint.
So it's like everything's aligning. Everything's aligning just perfectly.
Yes, exactly. We were blown away. See, she could have asked for an extension. That would have put it off, but she didn't ask for an extension, and she didn't file an opposition to it. So she waived the rights of all 388 defendants to oppose this petition. So now the justices go into conference by themselves, no one else in there, and they review the information and the petition, and they show that the Solicitor General has waived their right to oppose it, to file an opposition, and then they talk about it, and they basically take a vote. 9 of the justices take a vote. If 4 of the justices vote in favor of it moving forward to a full-blown hearing, it moves to a hearing. If not, then
so I was just going to ask you, what other roadblocks do you foresee coming up? What kind of interference can they play here?
Well, all the interference is done. The interference could have been the motion, the opposition, the filing of the opposition, which they waived the right to do. We're blown away with that. We can't believe that happened. So there's nothing that can stop it. So now it's going to conference. I suspect it could be in conferences as soon as next week. I think they do conference twice a week. And so we could see on the docket Monday that it's scheduled for conference on one of the days of that week, or they could extend it out, or they could make it based on national security issues. They could decide that it's going to be a sealed case and not let anyone hear or know about what they're doing. So they have the full power to completely not just reverse a decision or uphold a decision. They have the complete power to adjudicate the whole complaint, which they have access to. They can execute it and judge it and make decisions based, they can actually award everything that we're asking in the complaint, which is the removal of a sitting president, a vice president, and 385 members of the U.S. House and Senate.
So this could happen. This is like a miracle for the United States. This is a miracle for humanity if this happens. The Brunson brothers save America.
Well, this is the most power the Supreme Court has ever been handed. And the timing is just absolutely perfect because they need to do something. And we gave them the tools to do it. it has to come from the people, we the people, so we got it past the federal courts. We're thinking the 10th Circuit just thought, well, we'll just sit on, they'll never, because they had to know that we were going to keep pushing this all the way to the Supreme Court. And they thought that just sitting on it, they would prevent us from doing that. I don't think they were aware of the Rule 11 Supreme Court that allows national emergency petition to bypass their decision. So they hurried and backpedaled and made a decision. That's pretty funny.
So this is like a miracle, what's happening right now.
Oh yeah, and a lot of miracles leading up to it. We've been working on this almost like full time for over 2 years. We don't have families or jobs or anything that interfered with this. We were just able to dedicate basically our lives to this the last couple of years, and that's a miracle in and of itself. No wives, no children. We were just able to just focus totally on this. And if you go to sevendiscoveries.com, you can click on the history and I think the updates, it says updates, and you'll see all 3 lawsuits and the goings back and forth. If you go to the dockets, you'll see the mistakes that the federal courts were making and like apologizing for it. When Nancy Pelosi was first served my lawsuit the first time, okay, she'd been served twice. When she was first served and 83 others were served, Adam Schiff, Maxine Waters, they were served by the U.S. Marshal Service. Because at that time, there was a lockdown and we couldn't hire process servers. We couldn't have a deputy go in. No one could go in except the U.S. Marshals. So the federal court ordered the U.S. Marshals to serve the summons and complaint to the 385 defendants. And after about 80 or so defendants were served, including Nancy Pelosi and others, the federal court judge, someone or something got to him and he canceled it out and sent notice that was a mistake of the court and that they weren't supposed to do that, and that my complaint was deficient. So we battled that out in state court and finally got them to issue summonses again. But that case is stalled right now. But the case that my brother has gone all the way through all of that. We feel like we've taken the ball over the goal line. So the United States Supreme Court literally has the power now, without any interference, to completely adjudicate this case.
That's unbelievable. Juan, you want to jump in there and take this a little further? Juanito, you're on mute.
Oh, there we go. I muted. I just was enjoying what Loy was sharing. And by the way, Americans doing what Americans do out of nowhere. You guys come out and do this amazing work, dedicate your lives to it, as so many of us have, from so many different directions, and you don't know where the spaghetti is going to stick on the wall. You just keep throwing it on there till it sticks. And here you brothers dive in and do this. And hey, hats off to you.
Thank you.
You know, really, very few people can appreciate how total the dedication has to be to accomplish some of these things. And so I have total gratitude. Let me ask you this. In the court accepting this at this exact moment in time, I've said that part of this is the court's under potential attack. The Congress has been talking and spreading the word that they were going to try and take some action in this lame duck here in December to choke back the powers of the court with the term limits for the members of the court, et cetera. And then on the executive side, the president's side, they're talking about packing the court. So this actually put a loaded gun in the hand of the court and allows them to point back with a loaded weapon, fully cocked, ready to go, at a Congress and an executive branch that are really acting over the top if they're going to go in and attack the justices and their term limits and things like that, because it changes the balance of power at the federal level. And also, the reason why Congress and the Biden administration want to attack this court is because of Roe versus Wade. So this gives them protection potentially over, an attack because of what they did with Roe versus Wade. One of the things in talking with one of my constitutional law professor attorney friends yesterday and today, is this going to be a Mexican standoff? Are they just going to have a mutually assured destruction scenario perspective where they just, all sides stand there with the guns cocked and loaded and ready to shoot, but nothing happens? Or will the court act proactively, defensively in doing this? You guys got any thoughts? Do you see it in those kind of terms, the way I'm saying it, that this is kind of a standoff?
I have a vision of it actually being quite smooth. I think we could have a bloody revolution if they don't rule in favor of this, and a bloodless, smooth revolution if they do. And I envision myself seeing before Congress is in session again, the U.S. Marshal Service taking the court order to the Sergeant at Arms of Congress and showing them a list and a court order that the following names of individuals need to have their credentials canceled. And it would be that simple on that score. I could see Secret Service detail teams being shown court orders and U.S. Marshals supervising the release of the duties of the assignments of Secret Service and just walking away from certain individuals that are part of the executive branch. I could see special teams going to after the Speaker of the House or whomever it might be that they put back in office. I could see an executive order and court order ordering the communication directors to shut down the mainstream media. Maybe maybe it'd be a few seconds, maybe it'd be a few minutes. It would go dark, and then the special teams that have come in to replace them would make sure that the propaganda, the psyops arm of this cabal, these anti-Americans, that it all of a sudden we have a mainstream media news reporting the truth with new teams, new faces. And so I think it could be organized in quite a smooth transition. And people and Americans, a lot of Americans would think that was because of the election. I mean, a lot of people are so busy, just surviving, that they are not aware of the everything that takes place in midterms and elections. So I think it could be a fairly smooth transition on that score, on that level. But to speculate as to how everything could work out, well, that's a lot of.
Let me jump over to the
Let me
Ghost.
just add one thing.
Ghost, do you want to jump in real
Let me
quick?
just add one thing real quick before we
Okay.
go there. I just was mentioning it over with Michael Jaco because we were talking about this over there at his show a few minutes ago. If the Supreme Court wanted to try to protect the peaceful transition of power back to a lawful representative government at this crisis moment, this could be the smoothest, fastest way. And that's what I said, because if we wait, if they don't act now, literally before the end of the year, then the options for the American people to recapture control of their government become far more potentially kinetic. And so I agree with you, Lloyd. I think that this is the smoothest, safest possible way that they could choose to protect getting us back on the right track with the least drama possible. So it would be really cool. But anyway, go ahead. I know.
Ghost, you want to jump in there?
Had some. Yeah.
I'd been made aware of this case a number of weeks ago, and in a communication that I wrote to others, and I'll read it briefly. This is what I've been saying all along, can and should be done. And then I referenced 2 links that I put in reference to this case. Could actually be brought further, but there's a next move beyond the USC cited, which I cited some US code following. But let me pick up where it could actually be brought further, but that's a next move in parentheticals beyond USC cited as insult to injury in this case. This case must be followed, as the court does have quite imaginative ways of sidestepping, which a lot of that sidestepping has been gone around. You don't have to deal with it at this point. And then I finished with, if it exposes the higher fraud well above what this case alleges. Now I wrote insult to injury would be 5 USC 3331, 5 USC 3333, 5 USC 7311, and 18 USC 1918, which provides for penalties for violation of oath of office described in 5 USC 7311, which include A, removal from office, and B, confinement and or a fine or both. So what I'm saying in essence is this was a very competent, straightforward way of bringing this to the attention of the broadest audience possible, and in particular, the Supreme Court. I think others agree with me, even on this call, that when I saw them make the Roe v. Wade decision they made to turn it back to states' obligations to deal with it, that was a very big move. I think it was bigger than, and I think it telegraphed something regarding the state of the Supreme Court and their willingness, let's say, to do what's right. Because out of those three branches, the judicial, the executive, and the legislative, the judicial holds, in this case, a domino that if dropped, can affect a great deal of subjects, even unrelated. Because what you're calling the legislative body on is their malfeasance and malpractice. And they're going against 3331, 3333, both of which refer to if you are in a position of authority and you are aware of a wrongdoing or a crime and you do nothing about it, you've just breached your oath and you're subject to 7311 and 18 USC 1918, which basically says you're going to be removed, investigated, and fines and penalties and confinement. Well, that's the after effects. Now, if you show that many of these members were colluding with what they did to block the process that should have been followed, then in essence, you have them all. You have them all. And where does it go from there? And I apologize to everyone for not having or taking the time to dig into the reference cases and everything else contained in this petition. But I thought the petition was brilliant in its simplicity and eloquence, but it has firm standing. My only worry a few weeks ago was, well, will the Supreme Court take it on? And they did. So there's one of two reasons they could have taken it on. If they're a completely captured operation, they'll take it on to shoot it down. But that's going to be difficult. And that'll be a difficult explanation, even if you do some sleight of word in the syllabus following. It'll be very, very difficult for this to be justified as not following through with what I see as the intent, and the premise is sound so far.
So in a
Everything I've
sense,
read,
so in a sense, Ghost and Juanito, is this a chance for the Supreme Court to like come clean? Am I right in saying that? Like do the right thing?
Well, do the right thing, I'd say.
What would be the repercussions if they don't? I mean, if this is a military operation, can I ask that question, Juan? I mean, does it?
Let me say it this way: the Supreme Court, and Loy knows this from his end. They could have not given you that assistance if they, obviously each of the justices kind of watches cases coming up through the districts that they kind of oversee. And so they saw this case somewhere in there. There was a desire to see it rise to the correct level.
Yes.
And they could have just given it the bum's rush, like the other 5,000 to 8,000 cases a year that never get heard by the Supreme Court, seen nothing, and it just goes into a black hole. They chose to be a bit proactive. And even when they said, can you get that brief to us sooner? Because they needed this in time to have it as a real weapon of defense or proactively to go on the attack. because they needed it within a certain time period. I don't think that they're looking at this as something that gets drug out over some long period of time. The real crisis is December, as far as they're concerned, with this lame duck Congress. And, part of the rest of the issue is if you don't take this type of an action right now, and if in fact the whole point of your suit, if I understand it, Loy, and I'm here to be corrected. I'm so thankful to get a chance to talk directly with you. The point of the suit was that Congress, about 300 members of Congress, and then a bunch of senators and other people around the periphery, and the president, vice president, they didn't protect the American people from a foreign attack through the vote. And members of Congress, a large number, 100 plus, said, hey, we got to stop, slow down. We need to look at this. We need to take that 10 days and not certify the vote on January 6th, because these are valid concerns of foreign interference. We need to stop and examine what has happened in this election before we proceed with certification. You have the Director of National Intelligence didn't give his report timely at 45 days. On December 18th, after the election, concerning foreign interference. He says there's foreign interference 3 days earlier to the press, and then doesn't give a report because they can't agree on how much weight to give it. So Congress, any member of Congress, any member of the Senate that voted to certify the vote put America at risk to an attack by a foreign power. This is the national security aspect, because it was an act of war. And any member of Congress that didn't slow down and at least do an investigation put America at risk to be captured by a foreign power through the vote. So with that in mind, if they'd just done the 10-day investigation, then did the vote, you could at least say that they tried. They didn't even do that, which they didn't protect us from a foreign power. And the rest is all history. This isn't even about who won the vote in 2020. It's that they didn't listen to those members of Congress that raised a valid concern, and they just shined them on and went ahead and certified the vote anyway. If they'd done the 10 days of investigation and review, they might have come to a different conclusion, but at least they'd have done that review. Am I understanding that right, Loy?
Oh, absolutely. They breached our national security. This was a national security breach performed by the defendants.
And so any of those that did the vote without doing the investigation first, without getting the information from Homeland Security, Director of National Intelligence, they put us at risk. So they therefore were involved in a potentially treasonous act or a treasonous act. They're removed as being conspirators in treason, putting America at risk for capture from foreign government. Then the next phase of this thing, and you guys have gamed this out, so I want to hear how you say it. But the way this would evolve, as I understand it, would be that Trump he didn't concede the election, technically because of the way that we do continuity in government stuff. If the election was voided, Trump continues in the presidency technically from that time, almost retroactively. He never was read out. He was never debriefed. He was never taken out of the position of presidency, because this was a treasonous, unconstitutional act to certify a vote unlawfully without, protecting the Constitution, the Republic. So Trump would be president still. He would be recognized that you don't even have to swear him back into office. He just is recognized as president continuing. But you have a Congress that isn't present now, and the 2022 election doesn't happen. The president, for the sake of continuity in government, has to, you have a bunch of people potentially arrested, Congress and everybody else. So now, at some point in time, President Trump presides over the process in a continuity of government situation to set up the scenario for a lawful vote to restore constitution representative government to the country. So a vote at some point in the future when would you speculate that, let's just say this plays out, Trump's back in office, how soon would you speculate that Trump would be able to have another election? And would it include a presidential election, or would it only be federal offices to be followed by some presidential election at some further point? Maybe Trump says, I won't run again myself. I'll hold the office through this Congress coming back in. It would be the essential of a midterm and then a future election, or, you know, for president, say 2 years beyond. Am I saying it right, or how have you guys gained this out?
It makes sense to me that the sitting president at the time that the breach happened would still be president until they, until they work all that out. And how it's all worked out is beyond me. I don't know how they would do it, but it makes sense. Your point that the sitting president at the time of the breach would still be the president, and every executive order that has happened since then would be, they'd have to take that into account. So,
well, the wartime, this is an act of war. If, in fact, part of the thing is that if you arrest those people for treasonous act that voted to certify the vote, then they have the right to a defense. You also have to bring up the charges. Well, what was the treason based on? It's two things. First, they didn't provide the protection of a review. Yep. But then if their actions resulted in actual capture by a foreign government, then that's a separate part of the treason, a separate charge, probably collusion with an enemy in an act of war against the American people. Well, so now all of those facts come out, but a continuity in government situation would follow.
Well, this is a civil lawsuit. This is a civil lawsuit, so the criminal investigations would be separate from this, and they would launch those. And a lot of it has to do with intent. Incompetence wouldn't be, they wouldn't be guilty of treason if it's just stupidity or incompetence, in my opinion. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a criminal lawyer at all. So I'm just thinking that those are, they would all be accountable. I think there would be some serious investigations take place to see what was behind all of it. Now, all the defendants, one of the causes of action in this petition, which connects to the complaint, and they can completely adjudicate the whole complaint that this petition is connected to, is civil conspiracy. Now, when I know this, that when you are charged with conspiracy, you go to your lawyer and you want your conspiracy buddies to be represented by that lawyer, that would be malpractice. So they would have to all find legal representation in law firms that they would have to do some background checks and find that they had no connections with any of the other 387 defendants. So that would cause them a lot of problems. But as far as speculating what could actually happen, we just know we got the ball over the goal line and now it's up to them. We feel like we know miracles have happened to get us to this point. So we believe that there are other people in place like you gentlemen, getting it to the public, and the Supreme Court justices and all the states that would have to, replace representatives. But another thing that this does is this opens up the Achilles heel. Our representatives have been able to act with immunity, and they haven't been held accountable. Article 6 of the Constitution, and this is part of the pleading, requires a binding oath that they be bound by oath, and they've given themselves immunity. As a matter of fact, in California, they have perjury laws that actually have the words that exclude politicians and their oath of office. So they've been active over quite a few years, giving themselves immunity and violating Article 6 of the Constitution and subverting it by the Article 6 that requires a binding oath. So once this happens, it's like this goes right down to the local level. Some states, I know here in Utah, they have immunity protection that violates the state constitution as well. So this would be the legal authority. Supreme Court decision would be the legal authority to strip immunity from our representatives from the top down to the bottom. And that might cause certain individuals not to want to run for office if they're going to be accountable. And it would be a direction back to a representative form of government. If it was truly a representative form of government, you're representing the vote from the people or from the state legislators, and therefore you don't have liability. But when they're acting as dictators for 2 years or 6 years or or 4 years or whatever without being accountable, that's a big shift to going back to the Constitution and stripping them of their unconstitutional immunity. And that's a big part of the case.
I'm going to have a question for Brunson and Juan right here. Juan, I was going to ask you, if this is a military operation at the highest level, there's certain things going on behind the scenes. Does this interfere with it, or does this a Hail Mary or a wild card you guys didn't see coming, Juanito? Does this interfere with anything that's taking on, that's happening behind the scenes? I mean, how does this coordinate with everything? How does this mix in with everything that's going on already?
Well, I think it is complementary. And part of the whole point is we don't want to be a banana republic. We want the force of law to work correctly in our country. We want the courts to work. And so if you say this is a civil, you have a referral for criminal if things come up in the course of the civil trial that need to be reported as criminal. If in fact they did not protect the people from an unlawful vote to certify, and I've still got my horse in the throat from when I was in Mar-a-Lago and got something over there the other day, a week or two ago. But all of this can be information to be transferred over for criminal referral. And even from a military standpoint, if in fact, then there's knowledge, just like what Director Radcliffe had of foreign interference in the election, you can almost instantaneously switch this into a military court, military tribunal, things like that. And we do have information that we haven't discussed previously concerning certain actions by Chinese officers, a very specific term, on U.S. soil in this most recent election. So that's going to come out, and it's going to be dramatic. It's going to cause all sorts of problems. And in those places where those folks have been operating and the agents that they've been managing, there's going to be drama. So this could be a primer to help wake up the American people and to have a smoother transition and acclimatization to what's going on. Instead of having just an instantaneously, you're going to boiling hot steam environment, you could do a little bit softer transition to allow people to come up to speed. What happened? Who's involved? What? And then go to the next level with actual arrests for the criminal side, consequences of what they did in the civil side in this action not proceeding lawfully.
Ghost, do you want to chime in there?
Hold on. I do see this as a very fortuitous motion, in so much as that, yes, the public has been ground down and driven to the point where they don't know what to expect, but most of them are scared. There is always going to be remedy in this system, no matter how far afield it is from the original intent of a constitutional and representative republic. And something like this simply brings it home to the basic foundation that yes, there were moves made and not made intentionally in 2020, even prior to that. We're not going to go into prior. In 2020, and especially 2022, was it all monitored by different commands? Yes, it was. Is it all there to be had? Yes, it is. But here is an action put forth by civilians who've done their homework, who comprehend how the law works in this country to a great deal, a magnificent level. And they put forth what they've put forth. This and the very fact that the Supreme Court chose to hear the case is a minor miracle, a little more than a minor miracle unto itself. But what it opens the door for is not only correction, the beginning of investigations of, let's say, movements made by various forces to deconstruct what was done then, what has continued to happen, and what was done just recently. Saw it up close and personal. It's not a glass eye and a duck's ass could see what's happening. But this kind of foundational move, pro se, that on top of it means a great deal, because I think that what has many positives to it, that it shows that the average American is not incapable of doing these things. The average American does not have their hands tied. As I've said before, there's 1,001 things they can be doing, but something like this can shine the light on so many shadows that need to have a light shined on it. That would be, in essence, a huge domino effect regarding other issues that seem to be unrelated, but they're not. You know, when you're talking about the funding of various things, you're talking about decisions made that are totally antithetical to common sense and what the American people are sensing and knowing and beyond with what's being done to our system, our country. Now you can open the door on those who have been cooperative, colluding, in the real essence, colluding, conspiring, and making moves with foreign entities to affect. Let's start at the very basic level with the elections. The door is wide open. If the Supreme Court does what it should with what I've read thus far, then the door is open to many arenas that are in desperate and dire need of real investigation and real actions. Now, do I think a lot of the corporate U.S. structures that are in place are going to do this? Some will, some won't, or all will to a certain degree or another, whether they decide to sit back and leave it at 10% involvement or 90% involvement. That'll be up to them. But I'd weigh those kind of decisions carefully if I were sitting in positions of, say, authority in many agencies and in many things and in many locations right now. Because if this case has the outcome that's desired and that's intended, which there's no reason that I've been able to see so far constitutionally, legally, or lawfully that it shouldn't, then we're on that ledge. We're on the precipice of many things happening. And naturally my mind, and I'm sure the mind of Juan and a few others would go to this point, okay, let's see what pathetic false flag they'll pull out just to keep this from truly hitting the light of day and the import of this case from making it into the consciousness of the individual or the collective as a nation and even beyond. Because we know what's happened. Everyone knows what's happened. And it wasn't just 2020 and 2022. It goes back decades. And we're talking about the very fundamental right to have an unfettered, disenfranchised vote. And this is what they're calling it on. Fraud. And therefore, if one vote is disenfranchised, and others would argue this, but they're wrong on the moral and lawful plane where this rests. If one individual's vote is fraudulent, that voter is disenfranchised. Therefore, every vote in the country has been disenfranchised. Now, who's going to handle that? How would it be handled? I would assume original constitutional jurisdictions such as Secret Service, U.S. Marshals, but if those in key command positions within the military, outside of maybe certain circles, take their oath into account, and as the main reason why they do what they do, then whatever backups needed should not be an issue. We are in a state of emergency. We have been in a state of emergency since the banking holiday of 1933. A 1973 congressional panel concluded that was not only the truth, but it was supported by, I think, 560 plus odd entries into US code, which are basically operating instructions for that corporation. And nothing was done. Nothing was reversed. Only the ability to crank out executive orders, whether they had real constitutional basis or not, became a wholesale operation following the Nixon administration. And we've seen exactly, well, look when this so-called administration came into power, how I think they wore out, 3 dozen pens in the first week, signing these executive orders to try to counter other executive orders in place, but certain key ones were never countered. Again, all that evidence is in the Federal Registry. Everything is in there. And I think a lot of people right now out there that are both attorneys and not, who have a strong working knowledge of the law, need to be out there looking at every aspect of this case and putting out what they find and what their interpretations are. Because the fact that it's now going to go before the Supreme Court, I do not think they'll try to pull a card like they did with U.S. versus class and seal it in the name of national security. Why? Why would you do that? Well, because in the gigabytes of data available on that are not available to the public, you see exactly why. And the eloquence and beauty of this petition are that if you did that, that would be 100 or 1,000-fold even times more difficult to justify than what was done with U.S. versus class. And the syllabus, yes, it reads beautifully, but it's not the reason why they sealed everything in that case in the name of national security, because as I've defined before, and this is my humble opinion, national security is that which can reveal or expose the deeper operational aspects of the USDC Incorporated. And I'll call it that just for convenience sake. So,
Jump in there.
Yeah, I have a question here.
Right now.
I have a question here for Loy. So the named persons in this suit are anybody that voted for the certification of the vote. So that would include even Pence. That's why he's named in the suit. So all of those people would then have to be removed from office in order to the remedy is that they be removed from office in this civil suit. Is that correct?
That's correct. And barred from holding public office on any level in the United States for the rest of their lives.
Forever.
So
Yeah.
the reason I wanted to point that out is it just for people listening, well, if Trump continues as president, who's his vice president? Well, Pence isn't, because he's, as a part of this suit, he's off the ticket. So the next thing becomes, just playing this out. Well, who would replace Pence in the vice presidency? What would be the process? There's all sorts of fun, mind games you got to go through to figure this out. Or does the president, Trump, then declare a national emergency because of what's happened with so many members of Congress out in order to, under continuity of government type thing, and that brings in a military aspect, et cetera. So there's a lot of ways that, just like you guys have all this time to figure this out, and yet you don't even have a clue how it could go. I don't think anybody fully grasps what the options are that can take place here. There's a lot of fun drama ahead here.
Yeah,
I think
Congress
if
is
Army
out
Civil
till-
Affairs
Congress is out
does
till
their job.
Go ahead, Lloyd. Go ahead, Lloyd.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Congress is out of session till January 3rd, so a lot of things could happen between now and then that would put everything together.
And
So
this
we
is
don't have
getting
Congress right now.
zero media, none.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I
Make it-
think if Army Civil Affairs goes through their old regs and new regs, they can find where the DNA has been pulled out of them to oversee such things, such as the bar, et cetera. And I think if they get their ducks in a row along with other entities, and we'll keep that out of it for the moment, a lot can be done. An awful lot can be done. The situation has to be stabilized.
I got another question, Lloyd. This is a little bit, what's Thanksgiving like at your house when everybody shows up with what you guys are doing here? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we have a lot of support. Our family, total support. They always have been. It's been quite a few years in the study of the Constitution, what I published about the Constitution that led to the content that we have in the complaints and the petition. So the support from my family has been absolutely incredible, every single member.
What happened to you brothers that you got off on this track? I mean, you get dropped on your head, you fall off the fence post. What got you on this track? I mean, it's fun to even wonder how you guys got, what burr got in your pants that got you going this way on this project.
Yeah, well, Barack Obama got me going on studying the Constitution when he declared to the world that the Constitution was fundamentally flawed. That got me going, and I published some books about that. And then my brother had some properties that were affected by the subprime mortgage bundling and all that stock nonsense. And so he got mad and started digging in, figuring out how we could not have to spend money on expensive attorneys and do it himself. So he ended up litigating in state and federal court as a pro se litigant without representation from an attorney. And he actually was docketed with two of his cases that he was able to take to the United States Supreme Court. So you could research his name and see a couple of his cases at the Supreme Court. So, did
the courts give you a lot of leeway because you were pro se? I mean, they're supposed to, and I'm very familiar with this area of the way the law works. But you probably actually, if you'd gone with an attorney, you'd have spent to get to this point millions, and it never would have happened. Am I correct?
Well, actually, my brother had already been through it, and he did some studying about legal procedure. What's happened is the attorneys have their own cultural kind of legal procedure. So if someone goes by the book, it kind of kicks their butt. And that's what he did. You can see a lot of mistakes made by the courts. They were so confused. One of the courts confused the plaintiff with the defendants, and we had to file a motion to correct that. And they did it again. We had to file a motion to correct that. So they're just, the mistakes are all over the place. And my brother really knows procedure better than the lawyers do. So he needs to get his law license. He follows procedure better than they do, and that was the goal, is to kick their butts with procedure and go right to the U.S. Supreme Court with the constitutional authority and the legal remedies. And so he did a phenomenal job. And then my brother was.
Is this an older brother or a younger brother?
I'm the oldest. So these are my little brothers doing it. Yeah, we were the Brunson brothers back in the day. We got on a bunch of national television shows with our trumpets. Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and
with your trumpets.
Yeah, we're trumpet players. Yeah,
how ironic. How ironic is that?
Interesting, fascinating.
Hey,
I mean, come on, Juan. I mean, does it get any more ironic than that?
Oh my gosh, the hidden trump cards. Well, okay, Lloyd, you probably don't know this. I had this piece of art made, and so I don't know if you can see it where you're at, So
Great,
this
let's
is
see if I
Trump.
can-
Okay. Trump killing in this. He's the
Oh,
Almagador
sure.
killing the deep
Sure.
state.
Oh, I love
Okay.
it. Love it.
So, and of course, what's the deal with the Trump card? The Trump card is actually called the Matador in card games.
Oh,
Why
okay.
is it? Because the Trump card is the killer. It kills the game. All the
Oh.
games that have been going on in the world in this political theater that we're watching. And this is the moment where he could come in this huge audience that we're in and deliver the final
That's
blow to
right.
this deep state bullshit.
We certainly
And
could.
but at the end of the day, I would say the deck might have been loaded. We got other Trump cards in the deck. You guys might be the Trump card brothers.
I have a question. I actually have a question here for Juanito or the Ghost. Is this a time for a false flag in the sense that they would arrest Trump right now? Like, would they do that right now to offset this?
I was saying that earlier in an earlier conversation. Now would be the time for them to try to pull some kind of false flag on such an egregious level that it would steal attention from everything. And I'm sure I'm sure that's being watched out for.
Well, that would just help. the
Well, they would
justices.
want to take him as a hostage.
That would just help the justices make.
Sorry,
a
say that
decision.
again, Lloyd.
I think that would help the justices make a decision.
Yeah, that's what I would say also. I would
Yeah.
say that would push the justices to, if they were sitting on the fence or they were wondering on that'd force their hand to move, because I think that's where they're at. This is about a Mexican hat dance, and they've got this card getting lined up, and they're debating. You look, the justices have to be nervous about the consequences of doing this because it's so over the top in so many ways. I mean, not that it's not needed or lawful or whatever required, but yet the consequences of going forward with this are just astonishing. Do you know from your research, has this 10-day thing, I think it was Ted Cruz that proposed it initially, that they had to do a 10-day to review, and they blew past it. And the last time that was done was, I think, 1877, and that they did have a 10-day over a vote issue. So there is a history where Congress should have regarded this as a legitimate, needed thing. Is that true?
Required. It was actually required. I just want to make a comment about the transition. It could actually, if Trump were arrested, and they wanted him to take his place as president, we could have an interim president that would remove Merrick Garland, would have a whole new DOJ, and he'd be out of harm's way in a moment.
So a different interim president besides Trump?
It could be like the Speaker of the House, the House Majority Leader. Could be the interim president if there was a problem there, and then he would then fire Merrick Garland, and issue some executive orders, and Trump would be free from that arrest if that happened. That's my little point of view there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's some real fun mind games there. I would think that even if he was under arrest, but then the members of the Congress that did the arrest end up themselves being taken out of power, their actions moot, he would be recognized immediately and in the original position in the course of that. And if you're in disarray in Congress, because of course the Speaker of the House would be the majority party, but you've just taken most of that party out of office, because I don't think there's any Democrats that did vote.
Well, there wouldn't be any Democrats left. That's true. There wouldn't be all the Democrats or defendants, respondents. So there'd only be some Republicans.
So the plot thickens. The drama's really about to begin.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
This is something I didn't see coming. I mean, I'm sure you didn't either, Juanito or the Ghost. I'm sure you guys. I mean, this is like
not in this form. No, not in this form. But I saw something coming out of nowhere. I told you that, Nino, a number of times. Not necessarily on the level of a dangerous black swan event, but in a sense, this is a very, very gentle and very formidable black swan.
I'm gonna say, as this picks up traction and more attention, they're going to have to pull a false flag. They're going to have to. There's just too many things coming down on them. FTX, we got. I mean, that's a big one.
Beyond
Buying a
FTX,
laptop.
Nino,
Now this.
beyond FTX, you got Tremor. It's bigger than FTX. Tremor is the one that was funneling the crypto money directly to the Biden crime family, not just to Democrats in general. That's just breaking right now. And remember, by the way, I did talk about McAfee, talked about it on your show, etc. Excuse me, what's the deal with McAfee? If it reached the 400 million of his crypto, then his system began releasing the 32 terabytes of data. But because the cryptos collapsed, was the catch-22. I told you, that's the rusty knife and the private parts nailed to the tree and you're burning the hut down. They had a choice. And if they didn't keep the cryptos being pumped up and up and up, now it's collapsing. That's what exposed FTX, has now led to Tremor, and you're having collapse in the crypto market. They were in this catch-22. And that's why the McAfee is so epic in this, because that is dead man mocking.
Wow.
One way or another, you're getting it. And what are you gonna do? Dig up the dead guy and kill him again? And so that was this damned if you do, damned if you don't thing that was dialed in back with the McAfee stuff, and it's just now playing out. So all of this, there's a convergence right now. Is there a false flag in there? Look, if you're on the Democrat side and you see this for what it is, you see the Supreme Court has a loaded gun pointed at you right now. It's a kill shot. Those people will not survive this, because as soon as they're out of power, the rest of the information about what they've really been up to comes out, and they don't have any mechanisms to block the truth coming forward. And you do end up with some kind of a military interaction at some point, probably under Trump issuing a national emergency order of some type, because he'd be the one in power. And this process begins to bring the whole house of cards down, everything. And you have 2023 being this epic year. By the way, the Russians are going to start their tribunals in the Donbass sometime next year. We could be having our tribunals simultaneously here in the US in that same period, going at the same players from opposite directions on the vote issue, the monetary stuff, the payoffs, the crime families, and even the stuff going on right now at the 2022 election. Look, they were trying to get criminal families in power with connections all the way back to China, through Mexico, through here in the US. They'd had the whole southwestern United States covered in this Chinese control mechanism through the drugs and the human trafficking and all this other stuff. So this, if you're at the Supreme Court, if you're Justice Thomas, who I dearly love, and you want to take one shot, you got one shot to save America, and you got one window time-wise. Is it in spring? Is it after this new Congress comes in on this fraudulent vote in January? When are you going to do it? The unknown extra trump cards in the deck sound their horn. I love you guys.
Man, Loy, what a miracle, man. Loy, will you keep coming on my show to keep me updated?
Anytime, just give me a call. I'll be happy to do that.
And I'll bring Juan back on in the ghost.
Sure.
I guess we're going to call it here. It looks like everything is coming down like a house of cards on the deep state. I mean, this is just incredible to me. This is a miracle Hail Mary that you guys threw, and they caught it. And I'm just ready to see if it makes the touchdown, man. I'm so excited right now. Loy, thank you so much. Juanito, thank you so much. Ghost, thank you. As always, all you guys. This was a blessing. I'm putting this up on ninoscorner.tv and Rumble. It'll go on both.
And
so thank you guys very much.
my hat, Lloyd, my hat is off to you and your brothers and your family. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Oh, please, everyone, go to 7discoveries.com and learn more about it too. And if you can make a little
number 7.
It's number 7discoveries.com. And
I love it. 7.
Just make $1 donation, and we know you're out there helping us. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
You got it.
Oh,
all right, Juanito.
gosh.
All right, guys. Juanito, you want to say anything?
Let me just say a quick prayer. Thank you, Father God, for these brothers, the beautiful work they've done. We ask for your protection, your guidance, your provision as they continue in the work they're doing. I pray that you would bring Americans to back them up, shoulder up with them, give them that which they need to proceed forward. I know there's financial and moral and everything else. I thank you, Father, that your people have in their ranks these men to assist and protect and move America forward. Thank you, Father, for providing them. Give them your peace, protection, and provision in Jesus' name by the blood of Christ. Thank you, Father.
Amen. All right,
Amen.
guys.
Amen.
I'm signing out. I'll call you guys.
Okay, thanks.
All right, gentlemen.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I did. It's kind of a big deal, really big deal. And it came out of freaking nowhere, came out of left field. So if these guys didn't expect it, they're the good guys. I know the bad guys ain't expecting it. So anyway, share this out. Let people see this, what's going on. So my thought is I'll try to bury it. So the more we share it, and I'll keep you updated as much as I know. And go from there, man. Keep up the fight. All right, guys, take it easy.